Hey guys, my name is Emma and today I'm coming at you with my top 8 books for 2018. Now, I found it almost impossible to narrow down my top books for 2018 to one video's worth, so instead I'm coming at you with a series. This is going to last all week and each day we'll have a different video that focuses on a different kind of top 8. So for today we're starting this off with my top 8 standalone fiction books. These are in no particular order and I'm going to attempt to do this video and not say things like, I love this book is amazing, just over and over and over again, because that's not very informative for you. So starting off our list, we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Now, I know I'm late to the party with this one. This has been a very popular book, not only on BookTube but just in the world in general, for quite a few years now, and rumour has it Erin Morgenstern is finally coming out with another book this coming year. Very exciting. So this is a magical realism book set in a circus, and it is about two feuding magicians who are using their proteges to battle out two different styles of magic. One that's very formal and very book-learned, and one that is far more organic and natural. The best thing about this book, I think, is the imagery and the atmosphere that it manages to create. And I think that is quite a common theme throughout a lot of the books that I love, both today and in tomorrow's series top 8. But this one in particular was just magical. A real common theme with all of these books as well is they are ones that I couldn't put down and I was determined to finish, and this one I blitzed in about a day. Another book that has been immensely popular this year is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I listened to this one on audiobook and it is wonderful. It tells the story of Evelyn Hugo, the Hollywood actress starlet from the golden age of cinema, finally revealing her biography to a young budding journalist, and this includes details of her 7 husbands over her life. It's a sweeping biopic look at racism and homophobia in America and in Hollywood especially, and is just an absolutely wonderful piece of fiction. Wonderful apparently is my word for this video. We're going with wonderful today, so that's fine. Count how many times I say it from this point onwards. It's just, again, beautiful. I think the character work in this one is especially strong. I really enjoyed the audiobook. I think that the voice was very, very strong and there was a lot of character work put into it, which I loved, and the variety of cast was really wonderful. It's a story about a woman and how far she is willing to go to protect the ones that she loves. The next one I have actually lent to my mother, so I no longer have my copy here, but it is The Bees by Leilani Poole. Some books are on this list because I'm fundamentally a nerd at heart and I love learning new things, and The Bees is most definitely on that list for that. It's technically a fiction, but it tells the story of a bee from the point of view of said bee, and it works. Leilani Poole works really hard to get into the mindset of a bee and includes things like talking about their dancing as a way of explaining things. We go on a trip with her across fields to collect pollen. We find out about the culture in the hive. There's all sorts of really intricate detail about the life of bees that I found absolutely fascinating. This was another book that I inadvertently blitzed through in one day, but desperately wished had like another 6 or 7 chapters. Some people have read it as a bit of an allegory about about women's reproductive rights. You can read it in that way, but personally I think it's just as enjoyable to ignore all the political stuff and pretty much just read it for the story of a bee, which is awesome. The next one on my list is The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. It tells the tale of 4 siblings who find out from a gypsy the day that they are all going to die. Now, we as the reader and most of the siblings don't know their dates other than their own, but from that point on we then follow 4 separate sections which look at the siblings in order of which they die. And the thing that I really liked about this was just how strong the characters' voices were. Normally I find multiple points of view in a book quite irritating, and I don't tend to like to go above 2, maybe 3 at a push, because what I tend to find is that authors are not very good at differentiating those voices in a really strong manner. However, Chloe Benjamin does a phenomenal job of giving not just each individual sibling's voice a really strong sense of its own character, but also all of the supporting cast for each of their separate lives. There wasn't a single section in this where I was like, ugh, why are we talking about them? Let's move on to somebody else. When normally in point of view books, there's at least one character that I just don't care about and I wish we didn't hear from. This was awesome. If I had to pick a favourite, see, when I first talked about this book and I had to pick a favourite, it was the youngest daughter who was a magician. But actually, having now sat with the book for a while, I think it might be Simon, the actual youngest of the group. He's just wonderful and has such a passion for life that I think is absolutely stunning. Brilliant, amazing, guys, just beautiful. Now, a decent number of these were new releases, but we had to have a classic somewhere in there, and that is Joseph Heller's Catch-22. This is completely out of left field. I read this for Banned Bookathon, or I was intending to, and I think it drifted over technically outside of the readathon for me. And honestly, wasn't something I ever thought I'd get to outside of like a readathon prompt, but oh my god, I'm so pleased I did. This book is awesome. So it is the fairly well-known satirical account of the Second World War, and it is where the phrase catch-22 comes from, which refers to kind of a cyclical conundrum or paradox. So a classic one of modern day is, for most people, you need experience to get a job, but you need to get a job to be able to get experience. So how do you break into that? And this book is just a wonderful complex web of self-referential humour and building these little paradoxes, and just the most ridiculous, incredible, harrowing, funny, just heartbreaking incredibleness that is just, I think, the best account of war in general that I've ever read. It's just amazing, and I think it's something that I really need to reread to get even more from it. I did the audiobook of this as well, and I will link down below the specific narrator because I thought that they were very, very strong. Sorry, I think my chair is creaking, which is kind of killing my vibe a little bit. It's stunning, and I think it's a perfect example of why classics and modern classics become known as classics and why they do age so well, and it's something that we should really try to read more of, and this is actually one of the books that has prompted me to try and prioritise classics more on my list. Then we have a quiet, unassuming book in the form of Landline by Rainbow Rowell. I read this in ebook, again just blitzed it one morning, and it tells the tale of a couple who are going through some marital issues, and she has to work over Christmas, he flies back home to see his parents, takes the kids with him, and she's really worried that this is it for them. She goes back to her parents who live local to them, basically in floods of tears, terrified about the state of her marriage, and in doing so crashes in her old childhood bedroom, which includes her old childhood phone. Now, when she picks up the other end of the phone, it turns out that it's her husband from about 20 years before they were married, when they were just starting out, and it's her chance to be able to talk to him, and it's really an opportunity to explore relationships and how relationships develop over time, and what you need to give to each other to keep it going, and what you can end up taking. And it's just one of these absolutely lovely stories that explores humanity at its finest and at its weakest in an everyday setting. I didn't expect it to feature on a favourites, but actually, now I come to think about it, I keep coming back to it on my list, and I just think it now holds quite a special place in my heart. It was just a lovely, quiet, unassuming book. My favourite historical fiction by far this year is The Bookman's Tale by Charlie Lovett. Now, if you are familiar with William Shakespeare, who isn't in the reading world, you might also be familiar with the scandal and conspiracy about who Shakespeare actually was and whether he wrote everything that he did. And this is a historical fiction based around that idea. So it's a combination of a modern day story and then a historical story set indeed in the time of Shakespeare, and it is a bookseller slash kind of restorer's search to try and prove that this document that he's found will basically vindicate that Shakespeare actually wrote the work that we assign to Shakespeare. I personally love that whole conspiracy. I find it so interesting. I think it's really, really cool, and this was just a brilliant example of historical fiction with a specialism that I personally really found fascinating. Again, like with The Bees, it's a book where you get to learn loads, which I'm always keen on. I love historical fiction for that when it really delves into that, and if you are an avid not just book reader as in modern, but if you like Shakespeare and you like that whole time period and you like the concept of the book world beyond the books themselves, totally want to check out. My final one for this list is The Tea-Girl of Hummingbird Lane by Lisa C. This was another one that I did an audiobook for. It is very interesting that 3 out of the 8 books that have made it onto my top list were audiobook. Just an observation there for you. It's set in China, specifically in the tea-based clans and cultures that live in the mountains, and it follows the story of a young girl all the way through her life, specifically with her process of making tea and how that ends up saving her village. There's all sorts of discussions later about family and like how we understand cultural identity, but again, like with so many of the books that I've mentioned here, the big thing that I loved about this was the overwhelming amount of detail about the process involved in making tea. Now, from reading reviews, this is something that a lot of people found bogged down the story, but personally, I'm a massive dork and I will happily sit and listen to how you make tea for hours, because I did in audiobook form. I think it's brilliant. I think it strikes a really nice balance between genuinely real, interesting historical facts that are grounded in the world with a brilliant plot, lovely characters, and just a excellent cast that we were moving forward with. I think that the narration was great on the audiobook. I think the whole thing was really lovely. What I will say is there is a slight trigger warning at the very beginning of this book, that there is a scene that is mildly uncomfortable that involves the killing of a newborn baby, which was very intense, and you just have to kind of power through that to get to the main meat of the story, and it's the only part of the book that is like that, but oh, it comes out of nowhere if you're not expecting it. So I just really feel like I need to give people a heads up, because it really threw me and I didn't know what to expect from the rest of the book, but the rest of the book is not like it at all. You're absolutely fine. So there you have it, my top 8 for standalone fiction. Tomorrow I'm coming at you with my top 8 series that I read, so expect a fair amount of sci-fi and fantasy for that one, of course, and then throughout the week there should be some other ones, including audiobooks, non-fiction, covers, and other exciting things that I can't quite remember. I hope you found this interesting. Have a wonderful week, have a wonderful night, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful whatever time this is, and I'll see you tomorrow.